Welcome to Opposing View, where we stage rigorous debates on questions that bend the mind. Today's motion. A theistic explanation outperforms secular accounts in answering why anything exists at all. Put bluntly, when you zoom all the way out, past galaxies, past physical laws, past any why you've ever asked, does God explain existence better than secular alternatives or not? Arguing for the motion is Dr.Iliya, a philosopher of religion and metaphysics. Arguing against is Dr.Shaw, a philosopher of science focused on cosmology and explanatory norms. No affiliations mentioned. What matters are their arguments. Let's begin. Opening statements. Dr.Iliya for the motion.
Thank you. The question, why is there something rather than nothing, is not a request for a local cause, like why is there a rainbow, but for an ultimate explanation. My central claim? Theism, properly understood, explains existence more deeply and more coherently than secular accounts. The demand for an ultimate explanation, PSR, but wisely. Many secular accounts balk at the principle of sufficient reason, that everything that exists has an explanation. I don't insist on a naive, exceptionless PSR. I defend a principle of explanatory finality. If there is a good candidate for a final explanation, that doesn't itself require the kind of explanation it provides, unifies diverse features of reality, and is metaphysically possible, then it's rational to affirm it. Theism posits a necessary reality, God, whose essence is to exist, grounding contingent beings without needing an external cause. B. Contingency and modal depth. The universe appears contingent. It could have been otherwise or not at all. Physical constants could differ. Laws might be different. Different initial conditions could hold. Appeals to a brute fact convert contingency into mystery. Theism explains contingency by rooting it in a necessary foundation, whose will is the sufficient reason for the existence of a contingent cosmos. C. Explanatory unification across domains. Theism unifies otherwise puzzling data, fine-grained order, law-like regularity and stable symmetries, a universe intelligible to rational minds, mathematical elegance and applicability, deep, uncanny fit between abstract math and physical reality, consciousness and intentionality, first-person awareness and reason-directed thought, moral realism, objective moral truths that are binding and not merely preferences. On a secular view, these are explained piecemeal. Natural selection for cognition here, anthropic selection for constants there, lucky math physics resonance somewhere else, perhaps moral realism as a primitive. Theism says, the world is intelligible because it flows from an intellect. Minds exist because mind is fundamental. Values have authority because they reflect a necessary good. D. Why God, not just necessary physics? Some propose a necessary physical law or an abstract mathematical structure as the foundation. But laws and structures are descriptive or abstract. They don't do anything without being instantiated. Theism posits an active necessary reality with a causal power to instantiate a world. Moreover, a consistent theistic metaphysics avoids the modal collapse, worry by distinguishing between God's necessary existence and contingent creative will. E. Objections from cosmology. Cosmological models, quantum tunneling from nothing, the no-boundary proposal, multiverses, do not provide nothing to something explanations. There, nothing is typically a something, a law-like vacuum, a timeless wave function, a gravitational quantum structure. If you keep asking why that structure, why those amplitudes, you still reach for a final answer. Theism is not a science stopper. It's a metaphysical closure that makes sense of why there is a stage for science at all. F. Explanatory virtues. Theism scores high on explanatory scope, existence, order, consciousness, value, depth, necessity grounding contingency, and unification. Parsimony isn't just counting entities, it's about postulating the right kind of foundation. A single necessary mind is more explanatorily efficient than a patchwork of brute contingencies. Therefore, the theistic explanation outperforms secular accounts at the ultimate level.
Dr. Shaw, against the motion. Thank you. I'll argue that the motion fails on three fronts. The question is ill-posed as a demand for a single kind of explanation. Theistic explanation collapses into assertion, and secular accounts match or surpass theism in explanatory virtues without surplus metaphysics. The explanatory frame is misunderstood. Why is there something rather than nothing assumes that every question has a reason of the same type, but in science and in rational inquiry, some facts are basic. Explanation bottoms out in axioms, laws, or boundary conditions. Demanding that reality explain itself from outside reality is to ask for a level that may not exist. The PSR is not self-evident. A universal PSR is not analytically true and isn't supported by science. At quantum scales, events have probabilistic character not obviously underwritten by deterministic reasons. Even if that's emergent, it shows explanation can be non-necessitating or stochastic. The insistence on sufficient reason beyond a certain point is a philosophical appetite, not a rational requirement. The nothing gambit. Much rhetoric trades on a bait and switch, redefining nothing to mean a field, a law, a wave function, then declaring victory. I agree with Dr. Iliya. That's not literal nothing, but this cuts both ways. If strict nothing is incoherent, no logic, no possibility, no modal space, then the question, why not nothing, has no foothold. We don't need God to block an incoherent option. Theistic explanation is vague or question-begging. Saying a necessary mind did it raises new questions. Modal trouble. If God necessarily exists and is perfectly good and rational, is creating this specific world necessary or arbitrary? If necessary, contingency evaporates. If arbitrary, the explanation looks post hoc. Explanatory regress. God's nature explains God. Why isn't the world's nature explains the world equally acceptable? Underdetermination. Many theisms could claim this role. Which God? Why not a necessary mathematical universe or a necessary ensemble? E. Secular foundations are competitive. Consider three secular options: foundational law, structure, a minimal set of axioms with maximal generative power, like a timeless quantum state or a symmetry principle. Mathematical structuralism. Reality is the instantiation of a mathematical object. Existence is equivalent to consistency. Brute fact. Stop. Explanation terminates at the simplest adequate base. Beyond that, questions are category errors. Each avoids multiplying entities and holds to parsimony. Invoking a necessary person-like mind brings intentionality, value, and teleology into the base without independent evidence. Alleged unifications are overstated. Fine-tuning, multiverse models plus selection effects are scientifically live and don't require God. Math's effectiveness. Evolution plus cognitive biases plus model selection explain why successful math survives. Consciousness, theism, explains by saying mind is fundamental but offers no mechanism. Naturalistic programs, global workspace, predictive processing, integrated information, higher-order theories, at least connect mind to function and structure. Moral realism. Even if true, it doesn't follow that moral truth-makers are theistic. There are non-theistic Platonist or constructivist accounts. Finally, theism faces negative evidence, gratuitous suffering, hiddenness of God, religious disagreement. If God is the best explanation, we'd expect a more theism-shaped world. We don't have that. The secular picture is leaner, truer to methodological humility, and at least as explanatorily powerful where it counts.
Rebuttals. Dr.Iliya.
3 replies. Foundational physics versus foundational agency. A foundational law is impotent without being realized. Theism posits an agentive necessary being capable of instantiation. Explanations end in actualizing powers, not equations. Modal contingency. Creation is neither necessary nor arbitrary. It is free and reason responsive. God's will can be sufficiently reasoned, e.g., to share goodness, without being necessitated. That preserves contingency while grounding existence in necessity. Negative evidence. Hiddenness and suffering weigh against specific theisms, not against the claim that a theistic foundation best explains why anything exists. Today's motion is limited. Not is classical theism true, but does a theistic explanation outperform secular ones at the ultimate level? On the ultimate why, theism wins.
Dr.Shaw.
And 3 replies in kind. Actualizing power just renames the mystery. If laws need a mind to turn them on, why doesn't the mind need something to turn it on? Saying it's necessary by nature is exactly what a secularist says about a base structure. Freedom as explanation is not predictive. Free and reason-responsive is too elastic. Any world, this one, a different one, none, fits. That's not explanatory success, it's immunization. Scope versus evidence. Pulling value and mind into the foundation feels unifying because it matches human intuitions. But explanatory virtue isn't a vibe, it's testable grip. Secular foundations score higher on parsimony and empirical consonance. Theism buys a feeling of depth at the cost of unchecked metaphysics.
Cross-examination. Quick crossfire. Define nothing.
Strictly, no beings, no laws, no possibilities. If nothing is incoherent, then the question becomes, which necessary reality best explains contingent reality? Theism offers personal necessity with a creative power.
If strict nothing is incoherent, the universe's existence isn't a surprise needing God. The logical space of possibilities presupposed by the question already isn't nothing. Hence, the why anything challenge dissolves, or lands equally on theistic and secular feet.
Does the multiverse help?
It deflates fine-tuning by selection effects and emerges naturally from some inflationary pictures. It's not a magic wand, but it keeps us within physics-first explanation.
Multiverse models assume fertile laws, spawning many domains. Why those fertilizing laws? Why any lawhood at all? Theism explains why there is a generative rational order rather than blankness.
What about moral realism?
Objective moral truths and normativity fit a personal, supremely good foundation.
Or they fit non-theistic realism, or their construct supervening on social and biological facts. No theistic necessity there.
Consciousness.
Research programs connect consciousness to information processing, attention, and prediction. It's hard, but tractable.
Their best result explains, correlates, not why there's something it is like. Consciousness points to mind-first metaphysics.
Closing statements. Dr.Iliya for the motion.
At bedrock, either reality is a brute structure we accept without reason, or it is self-explaining. Theism offers a necessary, rational, and good foundation that actualizes contingent being, grounds intelligibility, illuminates consciousness, and secures value. Secular accounts fragment explanation, or halt it arbitrarily. On ultimate explanation, the theistic option outperforms.
Dr. Shaw, against the motion.
Theism doesn't outperform. It relabels the unexplained. Secular foundations keep us honest. Explanations may end, but they end where parsimony and empirical continuity say they should, at a minimal base. Mind, value, purpose at the ground floor feel satisfying, but they are free extras without evidence. The simpler picture wins.
That's our debate. Did the theistic foundation deliver a deeper why, or did the secular base hold the line on parsimony and evidence? Your take may hinge on whether you think explanations must end in mind, or can sensibly end in structure. If you enjoyed today's episode, share it with a friend who loves arguments that start where most answers stop. Suggested reading and viewing. Leibniz on the ultimate origination of things. Aquinas de ente et essentia. Summa Theologiae. 5 Ways Debate Context. Sean Carroll, The Big Picture, Poetic Naturalism. Timothy O'Connor, Theism, An Ultimate Explanation. Graham Oppy, Arguing About Gods. Alexander Vilenkin, Many Worlds in One, Cosmology and Multiverse. Roger Scruton, On Human Nature, Value and Personhood. Chalmers, The Conscious Mind. Metzinger, Being No One, Consciousness Debates. Penrose, The Road to Reality, Math and Physics.